Hi, everyone. Keith Ritchie here with Kentucky Higher Education Assistance Authority, or KHEAA. Today, I'll be walking you through the 2024-25 free application for federal student aid, better known as the FAFSA. Now, for purposes of today's video, I'll be walking you through line by line to give you a good understanding of the format of the FAFSA, the questions that it asks, and how to best answer them. We're not really going to talk a whole lot about aid eligibility or how to afford college in general on this video, but if you are interested in that information, I invite you to check out our website, KHEAA.gov, or spend some time scrolling through our videos on our YouTube channel. You'll find some great resources under Kentucky Higher Education Assistance Authority. One last thing worth noting before we get started. Before you jump into the 2024-25 FAFSA, it's super important that you first create an FSA ID and give it a few days in order for it to go through the verification process. If you can do that ahead of time, that will make your FAFSA a lot quicker and easier to get to the finish line. If you've not yet done that, no fear. We have a video on our YouTube channel called How to Create an FSA ID, and that will walk you through that process start to finish. So if you've already done that piece, this video today picks up where that one leaves off. So without further ado, let's jump into the 2024-25 FAFSA. The website you'll go to is studentaid.gov. When you get to the website, you'll first log in with your FSA ID, and it will bring you to the FAFSA landing page. Notice how there are two different forms to choose from, 24-25 as well as 23-24. Remember, the year that you want to complete the FAFSA is the year that you need the money. So if you're applying for aid for the 24-25 school year, that's the version that you'll select. So we'll go ahead and hit Start New Form. A student or a parent can actually start the FAFSA, but for today's demonstration, I'll select the option that says I am starting the FAFSA form as a student. I'll then hit Continue. The FAFSA then presents a series of onboarding pages that are designed to help shine a light on what to expect throughout the FAFSA form. If this is your first time going through studentaid.gov to complete this 2024-25 FAFSA, I do encourage you to watch the video and read through these pages because they are designed to make things a little easier. But since we'll be walking through it together, I'll go ahead and skip this. I'm now ready to hit Start FAFSA Form. Everything that is listed under student identity information is pulled from your FSA ID. So my advice on this page, just go line by line, make sure everything looks correct. If you notice anything that's out of sorts, all you have to do is go to your account settings and update that information. But everything looks good here, so we'll hit Continue. On the next page, it'll ask you for your state of legal residence. So in our case, we're going to put Kentucky. And then it asks when we became a legal resident of Kentucky. If you were born there and you've lived there your entire life, you would just put your birth month and birth year. But for purposes of today's demonstration, I'll put that I moved to Kentucky in May of 2010. A new feature on the 2024-25 FAFSA has to do with how federal tax information gets reported. In most circumstances, you won't have to pull out your tax returns and go, line by line, manually inputting that information, or even filling out a bunch of forms in hopes that everything matches your tax return. Now, the FAFSA uses something called the direct data exchange. So essentially, all you have to do is on this page, you have to provide consent in order for the IRS to directly input that federal tax information onto your FAFSA automatically. So all you have to do is scroll down to the bottom, past a lot of legal language, and just hit approve. That's what you're providing consent to, is to allow the IRS to fill out a good chunk of this FAFSA for you. One thing that's important to note, they want the new FAFSA to be a lot more automated than before. So if you decline that direct data exchange from the IRS, you're not going to be eligible for any federal student aid. So in other words, no consent and approval, no money. So it's super important to pass that information along to any other contributor who will be going on to your FAFSA, whether that be a parent or even a step parent. Every contributor on your FAFSA will need to make sure they provide consent in order for this direct data exchange to happen between the IRS and the FAFSA. Even if you're a non-tax filer, you'll still need to provide consent and hit approve. So we'll certainly hit approve today. We've now entered the personal circumstances section of the FAFSA. This section houses a series of questions to determine whether or not we're going to be considered a dependent student or an independent student for financial aid purposes. The difference between those two, a dependent student means that you have to provide parent information. An independent student does not. So the way that we answer these questions will help us figure out who else needs to go on this particular FAFSA. So we'll hit continue. The first question it'll ask is about our current marital status. Be careful about this because they're asking about the student and not parent at this part of the FAFSA. So I'm going to put that I'm a high school senior and I've never been married before. So I'm going to put single and continue. The next question now asks, when I begin the 2024-25 school year, what will my college grade level be? This can be a little tricky because it's not your overall plans. It's simply what is your level going to be during the 2024-25 school year. So if I'm a high school senior and I'm starting college in 24, then I'm going to go ahead and put first year freshman. Another thing that's worth noting about this particular question, even if you've taken dual credit classes before throughout high school, in fact, even if you've taken so many dual credit classes that you might be starting college as a sophomore technically, I would still put first year student on here if you're graduating from high school this year. When I begin the 2024-25 school year, will I have my first bachelor's degree? I'm going to put no for this and continue. Then it's going to show a series of personal circumstances where if I check any of these situations, if I check the box for any of these listed, it automatically will say that I'm an independent student. For the purposes of our demo today, I want to show you what it looks like as a dependent student who would be providing parent information. So I'm going to say that none of these situations apply to me. So I'll hit none of these apply and continue. The next question asks about homelessness. At any time on or after July 1st of 2023, was I unaccompanied and either A, homeless, or B, self-supporting and at risk of being homeless? Just so you can see what pops up, if you were to put yes to that, it'll ask if someone in any of these areas have ever deemed you to be homeless or at risk of being homeless. So just FYI. But for purposes of today, I'm going to go ahead and put no and continue. It then asks if I have any unusual circumstances that would prevent me from contacting my parents. So this would be situations like it would be unsafe to get in touch with parent information, or I don't know their whereabouts. Those are typically the situations that we'd be looking at. But it shows you some examples of situations that would be considered an unusual circumstance that would prohibit us from contacting parents. I'm going to go ahead and put no for our demonstration. So based on how I answered these questions, it is determined that I am considered a dependent student. As we mentioned before, that simply means that we will need to provide parent information on our FAFSA. If our parents are unwilling to provide that information, this right here is asking if we don't have an unusual circumstance, but maybe our parents are just unwilling to provide that information for whatever reason. If we put yes to that, we can at least get in touch with a financial aid administrator to help us determine eligibility for direct unsubsidized student loans. So we'll put no and continue. Since the FAFSA helped determine that I'm a dependent student, and I reported no unusual circumstance that would prevent me from providing parent information, it's now going to switch gears and start asking about my parents. The first question it'll ask is simply, are my parents married to each other? If I were to put yes to that question, I would need to then provide information for both parents, but I'm going to put no. When I put no, the next question pops up, do my parents live together? So this would mean, do my biological or adoptive parents live together but are unmarried? If I put yes to that, I would then also need to provide information for both parents, but I'm going to put no. Did one parent provide more financial support than the other over the last year? If so, that's the parent that we would go with. So I'm going to put yes. I'm going to put in this example that my mother provided more financial support to me over the last year. The next question that pops up in this circumstance, has the parent you identified in the previous question remarried? If I were to put yes to that, I would then need to provide information in this example for my mother and then my step parent, since she would be remarried. But I'm going to put no, that she's not been remarried. So the only parent that I would need to provide information for on this FAFSA would be my mother in this example, because she was the parent who provided the most financial support over the last 12 months. So I'll hit continue. Since we've determined that my mother's information is needed, this page allows me to invite her to be a contributor onto my FAFSA form. All I have to do is just simply fill this out, and she'll be notified via email that I need her to be a part of the FAFSA. You'll want to make sure that you're very careful in inputting this information, because of a social or the date of birth, or if there's a typo in the email address, for instance, it could slow down the whole process. So you want to just double and triple check that everything is being typed in correctly. Once you double check everything, you just hit send invite, and you receive this confirmation that my mother, in this example, has been sent an invite to be a contributor onto my FAFSA. So this will be in her inbox very soon, if not immediate. I then hit continue. So now that my mom's been identified as a contributor, it switches gears back to my information again. So theoretically, my mom could be working on her portion while I continue to finish up mine. We're now in the student demographic portion. So I'll just hit continue. In the student demographic information section, there are going to be a series of questions that you'll see that actually have no effect on your student aid eligibility. It's just simply for research purposes. So you can answer questions about race and gender and ethnicity, but you can also prefer not to answer as well. It then asks about my citizenship status. I'm going to click on U.S. citizen or national and continue. It then asks if either of my parents attended college or completed college. So I can put neither parent attended college, one or both parents attended college, but neither completed, one or both completed college, or I'm not sure. This is a new question that pops up in the 2024-25 version of the FAFSA about parents who are killed in the line of duty. The question is, was the student's parent or guardian killed in the line of duty while either one, serving on active duty as a member of the armed forces on or after the events of 9/11, or two, performing official duties as a public safety officer? The way that the FAFSA defines a public safety officer is a law enforcement officer, firefighter, or emergency service worker. If you put yes to that, that can increase some eligibility for certain programs, but I'm going to put no. It's then going to ask me, what will my high school completion status be at the beginning of the 2024-25 school year? So remember, this is looking ahead to next school year. I'm going to put that I'll have a high school diploma, and I'll hit continue. The next page asks, what high school did I graduate from, or will I graduate from? So you put in the state. I'm going to put Kentucky, and you can just search for your city, and they'll have a database here where the high school will populate on the FAFSA to make this a little bit easier. Once you find your high school, you can simply check the box and hit continue. The next page just confirms that everything is correct, that we put in the correct high school, and if so, we can hit continue. If not, you can hit edit and go back and change that. So we've completed the demographic section of the FAFSA, but now we have a few financial questions to answer as well. The good news is, because we already provided consent to have the FAFSA pull federal tax information directly from the IRS automatically, it cuts down on the number of questions in this section drastically. One thing that is worth noting, though, about the 2024-25 FAFSA is that the federal tax information, like income and tax records, it's actually pulling from a couple years back, from 2022. So because of that, if something has changed in your circumstances since the 2022 tax year, it's super important that you reach out to your financial aid office at the college and let them know about what's going on. So an example would be maybe a job that you or a parent had in 2022 is no longer there. That's an example of what they call a special financial circumstance, and colleges across the country have the ability to look at those circumstances and potentially help you through an appeal that can help you increase your eligibility for more aid. So if you have anything out of the ordinary with your finances, or anything that just seems out of sorts when you compare 2022 to current information, make sure you let your financial aid office know. So when it comes to the 2022 tax return information for the student, it's just a handful of questions that we would need to answer about IRA rollovers, pension rollovers, and potentially taxable college grants, scholarships, and AmeriCorps benefits that were reported to the IRS, and foreign earned income exclusion. So if none of these apply to you, you can certainly just put 0 for each of these and hit continue. It then will ask for student assets. So remember, when we're filling out this section, because it says student, we're just looking at things that are in our name as a student. So the first question is current total of cash, savings, and checking accounts. So I'm going to put in this example that I have $500 saved up in a bank account. The next question asks for current net worth of any investments, including real estate. I'm going to put that I have no investments. And then finally, it asks about net worth of businesses and investment farms. I'm going to put 0 for that as well. And continue. We've now reached the portion of the FAFSA where we input our colleges that we'll send the FAFSA to. You don't have to have your mind made up at the time of filling out your FAFSA. In fact, I would encourage you to go ahead and send this to any college you could potentially see yourself going to. So even if you've not applied to them yet, no big deal. You can still go ahead and throw them on this list and they'll receive a copy of the FAFSA. For the 2024-25 version of the FAFSA, you can actually add up to 20 colleges now. So you can do that by a couple of ways. You can either search by state, and city is optional, but you can go that way into the directory, or you can even go ahead, if you know the federal school code, you can type that in and hit search, and it'll pull it up from there. And all you have to do is just select the schools that you would like to add, and then scroll down to the bottom and hit continue. Then on the next page, it'll show the list of selected schools. If you hit one by mistake, you can always remove them. But the other cool thing about the FAFSA is you can also hit view info, and it'll pull up some information about the college and even some links to the website. The next page is our summary page. So we're really, really close to being done with the student portion of the FAFSA. All you have to do is go through each of the sections and just kind of look through it, make sure everything looks good to you. If you notice anything being off, you can always click on that section and edit if you need to. Everything looks good. And then we even have our contributor update where we've got confirmation that the invite email was sent to our mom so that she would be able to log on and complete her portion. So we'll go ahead and hit continue. And it brings us to the signature page. There's some legal information that it'll go through, and we're just agreeing to the terms and conditions, and we hit sign. We've now received confirmation that the student portion is complete, but that does not mean the FAFSA is done. Again, we're still waiting for contributors to go on and complete their portion. So in our case, the student part's done, but because we're a dependent student, we're waiting on that parent contributor. Speaking of parent contributors, let's check in on mom, see how she's doing. If you remember a few sections back, we sent that parent contributor invite email to mom that basically allows her to input her information on the FAFSA. This is something like what she would receive. The student is not eligible for federal student aid without her input, and it basically gives a little bit of information about how to go on and help out. And it also gives you a login button. So we'll click on login. And then in this page, the parent would actually put in her FSA ID. So not the students, but the parent would put in their FSA ID. They hit login, and they're greeted with this intro page. So we'll go ahead and hit accept invitation. And this is just telling us that because we're accepting the invitation, we are agreeing to share our information on the FAFSA. Now mom has officially entered the student's FAFSA as a parent contributor. And she'll just simply hit continue. Similar to the student at the beginning of their FAFSA experience, the parent will also go through a series of onboarding screens as well. So the parent is just continuing through each of these onboarding screens, and then they'll hit start FAFSA form. Very similar to what the student experienced. They're first greeted with some information that pulls from the FSA ID. If anything is out of sorts, just like the student, they can go to their account settings and edit that information. Also, just like the student, any contributor, parents, even step parents, if that applies, would need to make sure that they are able to provide consent to have the IRS pull tax information directly onto the FAFSA. So just like with the student, we'll hit approve. It then pulls up parent demographic section. And the first question it'll ask is the parent's current marital status as of today. So we're going to put mom's marital status as divorced and hit continue. It'll then ask for mom's legal state of residence. We're going to put Kentucky and that she's lived in the Bluegrass since May of 2010. It then switches gears to the parent financial section. And this part's a little bit different than what we saw on the student side, but it's asking at any time during 2022 or 2023, did the parent or anyone in their family receive any of the following benefits from these federal programs? If you can check the box to any of these situations, it exempts you from answering asset questions. But we're going to put none of these apply for purposes of today's demo. It then asks, is the parent's family size different from the number of individuals claimed on their 2022 tax return? Just so you can kind of see what that would look like. If you were to put yes, you have the option to manually input what the correct family size should be if it's something different than what your 2022 tax return would have showed. So an example of why a family might choose yes to this question would be maybe someone was born after those 2022 tax returns went through. So that would be an example of the family size being different compared to what that tax return would have shown. But we'll just go ahead and put no. It then asks how many people in the parent's family will be in college between July 1st of 2024 and June 30th of 2025. We're just going to put the one student. And then it's going to ask the similar tax questions that the student saw about rollovers from both IRAs and pensions. This right here asks if the parent received the earned income tax credit. So you can put yes, no, or don't know. I'm going to put no in this situation. It asks about taxable scholarships, grants, and AmeriCorps benefits, as well as foreign earned income exclusion. Very similar to what we saw in the student portion of the FAFSA. One thing that is different about the parent portion is this question about annual child support received. The way this is answered is you look at what was actually received by the parent over the last full calendar year. So if you're filling out this FAFSA in January of 2024, the last complete calendar year would have been 2023. If you fill this out in December of 2023, the last complete calendar year would have been 2022. So it depends on when you're actually completing this FAFSA form in terms of what year you're pulling child support received from. Also worth noting about this question, it's not necessarily what was agreed upon or what the court said needed to be paid. It's what did you actually receive in that last full calendar year. So in this example, we're going to put that mom received $5,000 in child support. It then asks about parent assets, very similar to what we saw in the student side. We're going to put that mom has $2,000 in the bank account, and we'll say that she has a net worth of $10,000 of investments based on some stocks that she owns. And then we'll put 0 for net worth of businesses and investment farms. Now we're at the summary page for the parent, so she can go through each of the sections and just check for mistakes. And just like the student, if something stands out to her, she can always go to that section and edit. Everything looks good, so we'll hit continue. And we're brought to the parent signature section. So just like the student, the parent will check the box and hit sign and submit. Congratulations, the FAFSA form is now complete. You get the confirmation that with the date, the student's name, and it also lets you know that the student should receive an email that confirms that the FAFSA is all the way completed. That's one of the interesting things about the new 2024-25 FAFSA. Whoever the last contributor is, whether it be the student or the parent, whoever the last person is to do their portion for a family on the FAFSA, they're the ones to actually hit submit and get it to the finish line. So because the student started this FAFSA, and then we went in as the parent to finish their portion, it was the parent who was the last contributor. Therefore, it was the parent who actually hit submit, and the FAFSA is now complete. Just want to let everyone know, you've now completed the 2024-25 free application for federal student aid. As always, if you have any questions or if there's ever anything we can do to help at KHEAA, please feel free to reach out to us. No matter where you stand, anywhere in the Commonwealth, you're always represented by at least one KHEAA outreach counselor. Best of luck to you and happy FAFSA filing.